The door was on the far side of the room. Lewis had to walk in front of his master and the marshal, walk past the commissioner, open the door, and get out. A runaway slave named Lewis was caught by a marshal in Cincinnati, but before he could be taken back to Kentucky where he was from, his master had to prove to the judge that he was in fact a slave. The trial lasted several days, with the marshal bringing evidence and witnesses to prove that Lewis was in fact a runaway fugitive. This process was used to prevent free blacks from being kidnapped and taken to the South, which happened far too often in those days. When the time came for Commissioner Carpenter's verdict, the courtroom was packed. It was a large hall in the upstairs of the courthouse, with a large table in the middle, and on one side sat the lawyers and Commissioner Carpenter. On the other end was Lewis, the marshal, and his master. Behind them was a group of abolitionists in support, and several free blacks in the area filling the rest of the room, as well as curious townspeople. Carpenter was a slow and soft-spoken man, so as he went over the case files in that crowded room, it was slightly noisy, so the marshal and master were leaning forward to listen to what he had to say, making sure that he didn't miss out on any details. Lewis was quite cramped, with the marshal on one side and his master on the other, and a crowd of abolitionists behind him. He felt a little cramped and he wanted to scoot back his chair a little bit. So he did. The marshal and Lewis's master were so concentrated on what the commissioner was saying that they didn't notice a movement from Lewis. So he scooted back again, and again, and again, until he was finally all the way behind his master and the marshal. They couldn't see him, so he got up. The door was on the far side of the room. Lewis had to walk in front of his master and the marshal, walk past the commissioner and all of his lawyers, open the door, and get out. So he slowly started inching his way around the table. A man put a hat on his head just to help a little bit with the disguise. And as he came around the corner, he was able to start walking without anybody noticing what was happening. Fortunately, a lot of free blacks were standing behind the commissioner and his lawyers, so Lewis was blending in with the crowd, and didn't have too much trouble actually getting to the door without anybody seeing him. He casually walked downstairs, onto the street, and out of town. It was a full 5 minutes before the marshal realized that his slave was gone. The president of the Underground Railroad, Levi Coffin, was standing right behind Lewis during the escape. And after the marshal and master left, Levi came up to the commissioner and asked him what he would have done had Lewis not escaped, what his decision was going to be. Carpenter said that the recently passed fugitive slave law gave him way too much power to do a duty that he was not willing to do. He would not send a man back into slavery. A few months later, the commissioner resigned. Freedom, by definition in the Constitution, is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Lewis understood this, and he also understood that risking death in pursuit of that freedom is better than living a full life while being controlled by another man. If you're wondering where I am, you can check out our Elwin Adventures channel over here, and you can click on this video here if you want to learn more about the Underground Railroad's president, Levi Coffin.